Hi, my name is Bree Swanson, and I am a recent graduate from Missouri State University with a double major in fashion merchandising and fashion design. I'm talking about my summer internship in New York City for the summer of 2021. So for my internship, I interned with Garrow Sparrow, which is a smaller kind of independent designer who does a lot of custom work for different celebrities, drag queen, burlesque artists, things like that. I found out about him because he was on the show Project Runway, and I know I really liked his stuff. And so I actually just reached out directly to him from LinkedIn, and that's how I got my internship. So Garrow Sparrow kind of focuses on more like corsetry and like modern historical takes on different garments. So like I said, I found my internship through LinkedIn. I just reached out directly to the assistant designer and kind of studio manager and asked if they were having people for an internship over the summer, and from there we were able to email back and forth, and then I was able to set up an interview while I was in New York City for the school trip, and from there we were able to just like kind of keep up with email communication, and that's how I got it. I know it sounds pretty easy, but I definitely took a lot of time to apply to a lot of different places and didn't hear back from a lot of places, but reaching out to a designer specifically is always kind of good if you go about it the right way. There's a lot of planning involved in this process. I was actually supposed to do this internship last summer, but due to COVID-19, I actually had to move it back. So with that, I was able to kind of save up more money and kind of mentally prepare myself for it. But definitely planning if you're wanting to go to a big city for your internship is very, very important. First of all, like I said, save extra money. If you can work while you're in school in that time and just save all of it and be very smart with it, it'll just make the whole process a lot easier. And for fashion design specifically, if you can do extra work, extra sewing, and extra projects in your free time, that was also very helpful because it helps you build up your portfolio and kind of stand up to those in other fashion schools, as well as kind of gives you some more like creative freedom outlet and gives you opportunities to learn. I also like to use online resources like watching YouTube videos. Even if I'm not sewing along with what they're doing, just watching those videos was very helpful, and it kind of gives you a new set of skills that you will be able to use in your internship. So for New York City specifically, for housing, there's kind of a few different options that you can choose. So one of the main options is a long-term Airbnb. So you can rent out an Airbnb for a month, weeks, however long you need it. This is nice. It's a little bit pricey, and sometimes there'll be some restrictions to it, but it is a good option because it is furnished most of the time, and you have a little bit more flexibility with locations, so you can kind of choose your area that you would like to be in that would be near you. And then another option, which is one that I actually went with, is a lot of the universities in New York City will actually rent out their apartments and their dormitories to students who are doing internships. So I actually stay in one of the NYU apartments, which is very nice because it's a good location. I'm right near Union Square, which has a lot of like central subway stops. So anywhere I want to get, I can pretty much get there. As well as it was nice because the timing was perfect for what I needed it. Some of the negatives though are they are like dorm style. Because of COVID, we actually each have our own room. So I have 2 other suite mates, but I do have my own room, which is very nice, but that might not always be the case once COVID's kind of a little bit better. And then some of the other negatives is that you have less freedom, so a lot more rules kind of that go with the university. So if you can put up with those, I would recommend it. But like I said, just doing research and kind of planning and seeing what works best for you specifically, that's going to help out a lot when you're trying to figure out how to get housing and stuff. And I'm sure a lot of these tie over to anywhere else that you're going to try to intern at. Okay, so for my internship, like I said, is with Garrow Sparrow, which we're on 37th Street near 8th Avenue. So this is kind of the heart of the garment district. So a kind of like a 4-block span or 4-street span between 2 avenues is kind of where a majority of like the stores that we need, anything like that it's all kind of in that area in the garment district. I know some internships might differ a little bit. Some are like in Times Square, or some are even like in the lower Manhattan. But the garment district, especially if you're doing fashion design, is where a lot of places will be, just because it's super convenient. So some of the responsibilities and things I did were, at the beginning, I did a lot of sourcing. So a lot of shopping for fabrics, getting swatches. So sometimes it would be very vague, like, oh, I need a specific type of fabric, or sometimes they would be looking for something more specific. Just making sure I get all the information about like the price, and then I'd also like to make sure I know what the fiber content was, just in case they had to ask, because sometimes they would ask things that you just wouldn't think of, as well as buying a lot of like zippers and then trims and all of that. That was kind of a big part of the start of it, as well as just kind of getting familiar with the team and kind of helping out where I can on projects, doing a lot of hand sewing, hand finishings. That was kind of what I started doing. Eventually, I started to offer help on assignments and projects that were a little bit bigger. I always just tried to keep busy. Whenever I had downtime, I would ask someone else what they needed help with, which sometimes was nothing, so I would just kind of find something to do, and sometimes they would actually need help with stuff. So a lot of times that I got to like be interactive and like work on bigger projects, it was because I asked. So my responsibilities varied a lot. I'd also had traveled to a custom printer at one point to get approvals for items. I've had to pick up fabrics from stores that they were ordering from, all sorts of things like that. So every day was kind of different, but so some of the things that I got to work on, I sadly can't show clips inside just because it's very secretive. But I can show pictures of things that have been released that I worked on. So the first thing I worked on was Doja Cat's Love to Dream Vivo music video look. This was pretty much like my second week or so I was still pretty new. So I did a lot of the shopping. So for like the long chiffon, that was, was the one who picked that up from the store, as well as took videos of it moving so we can make sure that we got the right kind of fabric for it. And then I also helped with a lot of just like tacking down all the pleats and then hand sewing some of the snaps on for the capes. So that was one of the big projects that I did that I was really excited when it came out. I got to help sew a bodysuit for someone out of a stretch material, but that one hasn't been released yet, so I can't show pictures. I also, one of my favorite things I did was a skirt for Aquaria, which I'll include a picture of because she has posted in it. This project was one that I kind of volunteered and put myself out there for, especially in the skirt, because I knew that there was going to be horsehair in it. And I had mentioned that I had done it before because I did for my collection, which, like I said, doing things that are outside of your comfort zone in school will help because you can pitch them, even if you do not remember how to do it, which I was a little rusty, but you can always play it off as everyone does things differently. Especially in a different like city, in a different region, they're gonna do things differently. But anyways, so for this skirt, I did a majority of putting it together. He did all of the draping and stuff on the side whenever he was doing a fitting, but I was able to do a lot of the hand finishings and kind of like help work with the other interns and kind of tell them where they needed to be and what they needed to do. So those were some of the like big projects I worked on. I also got to like help cut out fabric for another dress. So most of the construction was done by the other people, but I was in charge of like prepping all of the sequins fabric, because I offered to, even though it was very painful and long. Some of the biggest things that I learned were that you shouldn't stress about what you know and what you don't know, because a lot of times they will teach you. It's more about a willingness to learn than a big set of skills. Luckily, I felt pretty good with sewing going into it, but I always knew that there's room for improvement. But even if you don't, just kind of fake it till you make it and keep busy and just always find something to do, because there were times that maybe you weren't on, but if you could kind of get yourself out there, you could learn how to do something new. And that's how I learned most of the things I did, was by offering to help out with projects. Some of the other things I learned that were more practical were definitely like how to sew stretch fabrics, how to sew mesh, especially with industrial machines, because it was something I was just very foreign with. And I also learned a lot about like corsetry and different types of boning that we just really don't have available to us. I got to see kind of how to use those, because that's kind of what their main focus and what they're known for is. I also learned more skills with shopping for fabrics that we didn't really have experience with. A lot more with like swatching and kind of price comparisons, because most of the time we would just kind of go to the store and get whatever we can get, because the options were more limited. But I definitely kind of got a better feeling for different types of fabrics and how they're used, which is very good to know. And I also learned how to do some different like embellishments, like beading and all of that. So those are kind of the main things of what I learned. So some of them were skill-based. Some of them were mostly just, it's about your attitude and your willingness to learn, more so than what you come in knowing. So finally, some advice that I would have for anyone who is wanting to do a fashion design internship, either in New York City or with like a custom designer, is to just be confident in yourself, in your abilities, and do what you can beforehand to feel more confident. If that's working on other projects outside of it, or if that's asking questions in class and talking to your professors, have that confidence in yourself, because they will be able to see that and you'll be able to go very far. Another piece of advice I have is to really think about what you're wanting to get out of your design internship. So if you are wanting to go more into designing, maybe doing something more corporate or something where you can definitely have a designing role will be very important when you're searching. As for me, I like the aspect of designing, but garment construction is more kind of what I'm focused in. So doing an internship like what I was doing makes sense, because it was more focused on the construction aspect of it as opposed to the designing. So asking those questions when you're doing your interviews is really important to kind of gauge, because you want to be doing an internship in something that is going to be helpful and educational towards what you're going to be doing in the future. So that's one piece of advice I have. My final biggest piece of advice for anyone who's about to do an internship is to use all of the resources you can while you have them. Things like having Adobe and like Photoshop, Illustrator on the computers at school, use those and then get your skills very good. Make your own like technical flats and drawings and illustrations, and do all of that while you can, and it's free. Also use the professors, because they have really good advice and they can give you some really good help. I know I probably wouldn't have gone as far as I did without asking them for as much help as I did. So make sure you're using all your resources that you can while you're in school to help kind of build up that portfolio and confidence when you're going out of it. So that was my experience with my fashion design internship in New York City for the summer of 2021. I hope you're watching this. You can get some advice, get some tips, feel excited. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.